Hey, it's Mrs. Murrett, and I'm going to show you a new strategy that we learned in class today on how to solve quadratic equations. So before we get to that, it's called completing the square. And we're going to review just real quickly strategies we've already used. So depending on what our equation looks like, there's a reason to use a given strategy. So for number 1 and number 2 on this little warm-up, you can solve both of those using square roots. So the strategies that we've already used to solve quadratic equations, most recently, we've been using square roots. And we can use them in number 1 and also in number 2. So remember, if we want to know what x is when x squared equals 16, x is simply the square root of 16. And every positive number has two square roots, a positive and a negative. And so since the square root of 16 is 4, then x is equal to positive or negative 4. So that's the most basic way to solve a quadratic. Really simple. It's set up perfectly to just use a square root. Number 2, really similar. When we square root this side of the equation, we basically are just undoing the power of 2. So when we square root the quantity x plus 5 squared, we get x plus 5. And then same thing as over here, we're going to square root 64. And remember, there's a positive and a negative square root of 64. And the square root of 64 is 8. And so we would then go, okay, so we have two solutions. Find one by solving x plus 5 equals 8. Find the other one by solving x plus 5 equals negative 8. Oopsies. And so on. Okay, I'm not going to finish it because I want to get to the good stuff. And then the other strategy that you've learned in the past is factoring. Okay, so looking at here on number 3, we've got 3 terms over here, an x squared term, an x term, and then a constant. This would be a great time to factor if you can. So not every quadratic is factorable. So we can just check and see if this one is. Remember the big X? So it multiplies to negative 7 and adds to positive 6. And if you said 7 and negative 1, you are absolutely correct. And so then we would write that x squared plus 6x minus 7 in factored form. X plus 7 times x minus 1 is equal to 0. And then we would solve what would make x plus 7 equal 0? What would make x minus 1 equal 0? So for x plus 7, a negative 7 would make that 0. And for x minus 1, a positive 1 would make that 0. So it has solutions negative 7 and positive 1. And again, we could find that by factoring. So why use a new method, right? Just factor it. On number 4, you would want to move that 15 over by subtracting. So we have x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. And then you would do the same thing, like make the big X, what multiplies to negative 15 and adds to negative 2, and so on. Okay, factor, because it is factorable. This is negative 5 and 3, and then continue and solve. Again, I want to get to the good stuff because we have this here. Would those strategies work on the following problem, on this problem? Well, I don't know, but what I do know is I do know that I can't factor this. I do know that, like, how do you find the square root of x squared plus 8x plus 1? Like, I don't know how to solve this. If I try to factor what multiplies to 1 and adds to 8, nothing. So we need a different strategy. And to be completely honest with you, b squared minus, oh, we're going to be okay. Okay, I thought I had to adjust the problem a little bit, but I don't, so we're good. Okay, so we're going to do this strategy called completing the square. What that means is we want to somehow get this equation to look more like the equation in number 2, because I have a tool to solve the equation in number 2, and it's a process to do that, okay? So here is how we complete the square. You're going to follow the same process for every problem that you're solving on this completing the square homework. Okay. So to complete the square, how could I make this into a perfect square trinomial? And so what that means is I want to figure out what number should go there so that I can factor this trinomial as something squared, okay? And this is how you do it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to move the 1 over, which gives us 0 minus 1, so that's going to be nothing. 0 minus 1 is negative 1, okay? So I've just rearranged the equation. I put a blank here because I need to put something in the blank. But if I'm going to add something to the left side of the equation, I have to also add it to the right side of the equation. Just like I subtracted the 1 from both sides, if I'm going to add something, I have to add it to both sides. Otherwise, the equation is no longer equivalent. So here's how you figure out what goes there. We're going to go back to the box. We've used this box for so many different reasons. But in order, we want to come up with the top of the box to be labeled the exactly same as the bottom or the side of the box. We want the same labels up here. I know x squared comes from this, so I'm going to put an x squared here. And I've got this 8x. These two boxes have to add up to 8x. I'm going to put exactly half of 8x in each box so that they add up to 8x and they're the same. So these two boxes must add up to 8x, this box and this one. They have to add to 8x, the number in the middle, and they have to be equal. So the only way to do that is to just do 8x divided by 2. So 4x here and 4x here. That adds up to 8x, and they're exactly the same. So now we're just going to label the outside of the box. X squared comes from x times x. Each of these comes from multiplying x by 4. So now, what goes in that last place of the box? The empty spot in the box is where we put the answer to 4 times 4, which is 16. So this 16, that's what we add to both sides of the equation. Okay, because now we can factor the left side of the equation as x plus 4 times x plus 4, which is, bada boom, bada bing, x plus 4 squared. And then on the right side, negative 1 plus 16 is 15. So now this is what we're solving. And we have a tool for this. Our tool is to now use square roots. So our target is to complete the square to get our equation to look like this. Now we use the tool that we know, which is square roots, to finish solving. So I'm going to square root both sides. When I square root here, I get x plus 4. Positive or negative square root of 15. And here's the lovely part, guys. 15 is not a perfect square. So we can just leave it as the positive or the negative square root of 15. However, we do have to move the 4 over. So we would do that by subtracting, right? So we'd move the 4 to the other side. And then here comes the cleanup crew. This is x. When we write our answer, we want the non-radical part to come first. That's going to be a negative 4 this time, followed by plus or minus and the radical. Okay, so you can write your answer like that. We've got our two solutions written into one with the plus or minus sign. Or you could say x equals negative 4 plus the square root of 15, and x equals negative 4 minus the square root of 15. Okay, so if you are doing distance learning right now, there are some more examples in that note sheet, and then you're going to be able to do the assignment. There's a video key that goes with the assignment as well. I will post it as soon as I get it done. So hope you have a good day, and I hope this was helpful in learning how to solve a quadratic by completing the square.